And okay. If everyone could mute themselves, that would be great. And then just unmute when you have a question. That just helps with the background noise for folks. So thank you for joining us tonight as a little intro to our upcoming soccer season. We are very excited. Things are looking pretty positive, and that we'll be able to actually play some team sports as team sports rather than just high level skills as we were looking to, or had to do last year. So we'll talk a little bit about COVID, and some stuff's changed as far as how we address that and such. But joining me tonight is Steve Bennett, our Senior Director of Sports and Competition. I think everybody knows me, but if you don't, I'm Mike Zarnowski, our VP of Sports. And then also with us is Mr. Jeff Bailey, our officials coordinator. Jeff's also been an official with us for quite a while. Not with us today because she got tickets to New Kids on the Block and Salt and Pepper is Miss Melissa Anger. So we know where we rank in her priorities. So good for her. She deserves a night of fun and excitement. So I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that tomorrow. But in her absence, I think we'll Jeff, Steve, and I will be able to cover stuff pretty well. So we're going to cover a lot of this stuff. You will get these slides probably tomorrow, and Melissa will send them out. But you can see the different things that we're going to cover. And again, if you have a question, if you could either raise your hand or put it in the chat, and then when we recognize you, we'll have you unmute your line. But wanna cruise, and we can get this done within our hour. So the COVID protocols, they've been updated. If you weren't aware, updated right around the time or right after summer games, and so mid-June. It recognizes the new protocols, the new things that we need to and the different phases we've got, all recognize changes in vaccination and other things that are out there. For the time being, we're not suspending any in-person programming, and it looks like for the most part in this spread, we wouldn't be suspending in-person programming. In any situation, there would just be additional protocols that we would need to follow. We're going to be utilizing some metrics that we'll see on the next slide, and in terms of incidence as well as vaccination rates and such. At this point in time, also Maryland is applying those on a statewide basis. So rather than, for those of you who were with us and working on things last fall, we were looking at things on a county by county basis and where each county was. Here now we're just looking statewide. And the plan is to stick with that unless we get a county whose rates or whose metrics are way skewed and out of sync with the rest of the state. And then we may have to look at a different scenario there. We'll talk a little bit about vaccination rates on later slides. So why don't we just dive right in. So we have three phases or three categories for our risk. One is the low risk category. We are in that right now. And that is where the rate of new cases per 100,000 using if you've looked at any of the charts and such, there's a 7-day rolling average that they use. To be in the green, either that number needs to be below 10. Right now, Maryland is at 8. It has grown quite a bit over the last couple of days, but it looks like it might be tapering off at 8. So as long as we aren't above 10, we're fine and we're in low risk. Or if 80% of the participants at the event or the activity, so that would include your training sessions and such, if 80% or more of those participants are fully vaccinated, no matter what the case rate is, then we are in low risk because just the large number of folks there are fully vaccinated. So, and in that situation, we just follow whatever the local regulations are. Typically, they're going to be at the state level, but certain counties or jurisdictions may have their own variances on that. Then we look at moderate risk. That's when we have 11 to 15 cases per 100,000 and less than 80% fully vaccinated. Because if we're at 80%, no matter what the other number is, we're definitely in low risk. So it has to be both of those. And in that case, we have some additional protocols, which we'll see on the next two slides that are summarized there for masking and social distancing and so on down the line. And then if we get into the significant risk, and again, here, it needs to be both 15 new cases or more new cases per 100,000 and also less than 80% vaccinated, in which case there are some additional restrictions and there's also some size restrictions that kick in for groups inside that we would, regardless of what the local regulations are, we would have a separate requirement on group size indoors. So I'm not going to read all this through to you. You can read it, and again, there's a great document that there are links to all over on our site and such, and will be included in the follow-up with the recording and all that goes out to you. But again, while we're in low risk, it's the local size and venue regulations. So actually I should say that. So we've been saying about the state or the county government, there could also be restrictions that the particular facility that you're using has placed on there. And then you would, of course, need to follow that. You'll notice there that we have this communicable disease waiver that is now required across the board. If you haven't been doing anything with us since the fall, this is different. This is not the same thing as the form we had folks fill out in the fall. That was the acknowledgement of risk and such. This is a new form that came out in March from SOI, Special Olympics International, and everyone is required to complete it. It's good for 3 years, and then you need to re-sign it. Basically, everybody who participates in any way in in-person activities needs to have signed the communicable disease waiver across the board. You can see when we're in green, they're asking that we put signage out and such, reminding people of just safe practices, but there's no screening and such. If we get to the moderate risk, we do the screening of the 4 questions. We're not going to go into these. If you're not familiar with them, they're in the documentation that you'll have. But we don't have to do the temperature checks. If we do get into significant risk, then the temperature checks kick in as well. There's in terms of no change in terms of if someone's test positive to COVID and such. And then as far as with the low risk with masking, you follow local restrictions with that. And I know that there are some variations with that, county by county. If a person is fully vaccinated, at least according to Special Olympics, they do not have to wear a mask. They certainly are welcome to, but they do not have to wear a mask. If they're not fully vaccinated, then they don't have to wear a mask when they're engaged in their activity, but they do need to wear it at all other times. So that's similar to the mask requirement we had for everybody for much of the last year, where wear a mask coming in, and then once they start your stretches and your activity at your training programs, they could take the mask off and then we'll put it back on afterwards. If we get into the moderate risk category, then the masks are required for everyone except when they are engaged in the activity. Okay. Then distancing when we're at low risk, there's no, in general, when you're not playing sports, we want folks to just practice safe practices and social distancing, but it's not required on the court or on the field, et cetera. When we get to moderate risk, the distancing, the 6-foot distancing does kick in. For transportation, this is a different, one significant change, and it's consistent across the board. And that is, as always, encourage folks to use their own private transportation, families or agency, et cetera. However, if Special Olympics is providing or arranging that transportation, then everyone in the vehicle needs to be wearing a mask while they're transporting. When we say arranging, Obviously, if Special Olympics has rented a bus or a van or whatever, and they're providing it, that's clearly Special Olympics provided transportation. If Special Olympics, and that means you as well, your training program, if you're coordinating carpools or something along those lines, then that still counts as Special Olympics coordinated or arranged transportation. And in that case, masking of everyone inside the vehicle would need to be adhered to. And then also within the vehicles, and this goes across the board, it's one person per seat. That may seem obvious. It had been previous to this that even with, if you were providing transportation, you had to have that 6-foot social distancing. So that pretty much limited to 1 or 2 people in a vehicle. But here it's, you know, if it's a 4-seater in the car, you can have 4 people, so on down the line. If it does occur that you have housing, and this could be the case, I know for soccer, some areas or delegations come down and stay in Salisbury the night before. If that's the case, if everyone is fully vaccinated, you can have up to 4 people in the room. As long as you're following the general housing requirements, which I'm not going to go into here, but it's, you know, each person has to have their own bed and a few other things, same genders, so on down the line. If, however, if Special Olympics is providing the accommodations, if one person is unvaccinated, he or she can only stay in a room with one other person who is vaccinated, or with one other person who is from their same household. Okay, and that's consistent across. If we do get into the significant risk, no overnight events are permitted for Special Olympics stuff. Spectators, you see the variation there. There's no, it gets a little bit more restricted as we go forward, and then meals similarly there. So any questions on this? We'll get to the vaccination stuff on the next slide. But any questions anybody has?
I don't see any in the chat at this time, Mike.
Thank you, Steve. So for vaccinations, it is not a requirement for participation. That's the case at this point. We don't anticipate that changing, but this is a dynamic situation, so we don't want to make a statement that it'll never happen. So, but right now, vaccination is not required to participate. We will be, and this changed if you were on a preseason webinar up until, I guess, a week or so ago. And any time earlier than that, we were saying we might. No, we definitely will be collecting and tracking vaccination information solely, or well, I guess for 2 purposes. That one is if we have to have, or an area is utilizing an overnight situation, we need that information so that the housing can be worked out. And then secondly, so that we can track for that 80% vaccination rate, which if we're at 80% at either your training program or at an event, a competition, et cetera, then we're in the green regardless of any other number that's there. So the only way we can do that is with tracking the vaccinations. So with this is health information, just as information on the medical is the case. Certainly you as a coach can have that information, but it's not something that we would be sharing outside of Special Olympics. As is noted again, in case it wasn't clear, it can't affect registration or participation or waiting lists or that type of thing in terms of for that. Now, that said, if there's a facility that says only vaccinated people are permitted, there may be an issue with that. Generally, we want to try to avoid that. I don't know that there are many facilities like that at the moment, at least in Maryland. But anyhow, we're putting together the process so we can track all this in GMS, which is our computer system that our areas all have access to. And we'll be sharing more details with the area leadership in a back-to-back meeting on August 18th, where we'll go through the details. We're still working through the certification. We're doing sort of a test run with the kayaking time trials and kayaking finals the next 2 weekends, and trying to collect some information with that. And then we'll make it more formalized and having submissions and so on. So any questions on that before we actually get now into soccer? Nope. Cool. Thank you. Going on. So just want to make sure everybody's aware. of the soccer resource page. It's a little bit of a screenshot here. It's regularly getting updated. It's part of our overall coach resource pages, where if you go to the education or the coach education and development section, it has all the courses that each coach has taken and their certification status. It will soon, on the main coach resource page, soon as in we anticipate by the end of August, we'll also have full listings of all athletes and their medical expirations, as well as all volunteers and their other expirations. Right now, that's only available for the coaches, but adding those in as well. And not going to have birth dates or any of that stuff, so it's still fine from an identity standpoint, but it would have that as a resource for coaches to look up and see what's what. Of course, your area director and your area leadership are your primary point for that. And that link is there, and again, you'll get these slides likely tomorrow from Melissa, unless she's rocked out too much with Joey and Jordan and the rest of the guys. And then a link to the U.S. Soccer Federation and FIFA, of course, that we've got there. So one thing to point out, the football rules or soccer rules, since they use the international, were updated in 2020. We'll touch on some of those, or actually Jeff will touch on some of the I think there's 2 changes that have some impact on us, at least in the events that we offer. But if you're not, if you're looking at the rules that you've downloaded, if it doesn't have that picture on it, you don't have the most recent one. The other thing, and hopefully all of you as coaches are utilizing this, Special Olympics International has developed these coaching guides, one for every one of our international sports. The football one, and again, using football, it's soccer here. They are phenomenal coaching guides. I think many of you know I coach track, and I'm actually going to go back and coach soccer again this season myself. And they are just fantastic resources for you as a coach. Gives you lots of guidance on teaching skills and so on. This was just updated this year. So even if you've used it before, go back and look at it again. You can either download a PDF of it. I think you can download a PDF in Spanish as well, English and Spanish, or it actually is designed so that you can look at it and use it on your phone or your tablet or whatever. And I believe this version still has embedded videos and so on. It is, for any of the sports that are offered, it is one of the absolute best things that Special Olympics has ever come out with. If you do nothing else after this session, go and check that out. It absolutely will make you a better coach. It will make your assistant coaches better coaches, in addition to any of our coach education opportunities that you take advantage of as well. The events that we're offering here, we have the same events that we've had before. So 7v7 soccer, and for that is for all of our adult age groups, so all 22 and above. We do have 5v5, and that's traditional and unified is being offered. We'll see, depending upon numbers and all, how many teams we have. We certainly expect to have an impact on the number of teams, given all the situation for the last year and a half. But we're optimistic we'll have both traditional and unified for that. 5v5 is what's offered for the youth teams. And the 2 age groups that are there are 8 to 15 and 16 to 21. And again, traditional and unified there. And then for the 7v7 PDU, or Player Development Unified, it's 7v7, but it's 5 athletes and 2 mentors or partners. And I believe Jeff will touch a little bit more on that later. And then we also have the individual skills competition. This is the quote unquote traditional individual skills competition, not the team level skills that the soccer sports management team developed last season and was used in place of when we weren't able to have team competition. And then you note there that the state tournament is set for October 31st at our typical location down at the Crown Sports Complex in Fruitland. Sticking with the different events that we're offering and roster sizes, just a couple rule reminders here. As a reminder, hopefully everyone's aware that an individual who has Down syndrome can only play soccer if they have gone through and had been examined for atlantoaxial instability, or AAI. formerly called atlantoaxial dislocation, and been found not to have that in order to play soccer. So there's an exception to that we're not going to go into, that there's extra reviews that need to take place. If you have an athlete who has Down syndrome and has AAI and wants to play soccer, really wants to play soccer, call us and we can walk you through that. There's just a slew of waivers and additional examinations that have to take place for that, but for the most part, it's not permitted. Roster sizes for 7v7, unified or traditional. It's a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 14. For traditional 7v7, in order to play the game, you should have 7 players on the field at a time, but you must have 5 players on the field or forfeit. If you can't put 5 players on the field, you can't play. Same thing goes for unified, 5 players or forfeit. The variation or the nuance, I guess, on that is you must have either one more athlete than the number of partners or an equal number of each. So if you have 7v7, traditionally or typically, you have 4 athletes, 4 individuals with an intellectual disability, and 3 unified partners without an intellectual disability. So you can go 4 athletes, 3 partners. You could go, if you have to go down and you only have 6 players, it has to be 3 and 3, 3 athletes, 3 partners. If you go down to that minimum, you have to get 5 players on the field. That has to be 3 athletes and 2 partners. We didn't spell all that out here in the rule in the slide. If you go to the rules that we saw the picture of 2 pages up, if you go to the rules, that's all spelled out in excruciating detail within that, so you can't miss it. But there's no need to put that here. Similarly, for the 5v5, it's a minimum of 8, maximum of 10. For both traditional and unified, you have to have 3 players on the field or you forfeit the game. Obviously, you want 5, but there could be a situation where you're stuck. And then with unified, again, it's 1 more athlete than partners. So you would typically be 3 athletes, 2 partners. You could go to 2 and 2, or 2 athletes and 1 partner if you did get to that situation of having only 3 athletes or 3 players to put on the field. And again, if you don't, if you can't meet those requirements, you forfeit the match then. And then for 7v7 PDU, it's a little different in that you have to have 5 athletes and 2 mentors on the field at all times. And again, the minimum and maximum. We'll talk again a little bit more about PDU a little later. I hope a lot of you who have a number of skills athletes or individual skills athletes consider, if you haven't done PDU, it is and this is speaking as a coach, I coached PDU and skills for a number of years. It's an excellent next step for many of your skills athletes, and strongly recommend you consider it if you have enough to make that work. Let's see. So you'll see when we get to the deadlines and such, there's an assessment date that things need to be turned in. Once you send that in, the rosters are set. As a reminder with this, your players, this includes athletes and unified partners and mentors, can only play on 1 team during the season. You can't be swapping them around. You can't, mix up your teams at the various competitions. What you do within your program when you're training, that's your own business. But when you come to any of the competitions, they need to stay as the teams that are there. And that's just repeated there in the next line. If that happens at a competition, that competition is not going to count as towards the minimum requirement for the team. And then if it happens at one of the required qualifiers, the team will be disqualified for the state championship. So please don't do that. I don't think that had been an issue a number of years ago. I don't think it's that much. It's reared its head in quite a while, but just want to really make sure folks are aware of that. Again, the age groupings, it's a little redundant, but we had it before. The 5v5 is for the youth, and that is 8 to 15 and 16 to 21. For 7v7, and which is both the regular 7v7 and unified, as well as PDU, it's for adults 22 and up. Okay. I'm not going to read through this. Basically, you can have a player play up into another age group. there's some restrictions here. If you have a situation like that, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed since this has been the case, I think now for at least 6 or 7 years, and so on. So if you have that situation, connect with Melissa and she'll walk through it. I don't know that we need to really talk through all this right here. The dimensions of the field we've got here. You see there's minimum, maximum soccer, there's variation there. And then the time, the goal size, and so on. Again, the goal size, there is some variation. We strive to have that size. A lot of it is going to be dependent upon what's available at the facility. And then same thing goes for 5v5. You've got those there. Note that for 7v7, it's 2 20-minute halves with a 5-minute halftime. I believe in both cases, and then for 5v5, it's 2 15-minute halves with a 5-minute halftime. And that's what we got. So this, I thought we had the deadlines, but I guess, Jeff, I think were you going to cover this?
I was going to go over the rules starting with this particular slide 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it is all yours. Oh, that's right. Steve's going to cover the deadlines portion.
Yeah.
Still with us. Great. So
Yeah.
go for it.
Thanks a lot. Just a couple of small items that to review throughout the course of my experiences here. Some of these things have changed a little bit, but not a whole lot. First one, and we always seem to have this question like the first weekend of everything. There is no heading in Special Olympics Maryland soccer at any level. If a player attempts to head the ball, the official will generally, first of all, blow the whistle, give a friendly reminder that it is not allowed. The restart on an inadvertent header or any header at this point level is going to be a dropped ball. And that's the way we'll begin. So if the players continue to attempt to head the ball, they will be asked to be taken out. They will be asked to be taken out of the game. And if they still continue this act, they will be ejected for the remainder of the game. That has never been an issue. Most of the heading that occurs out there is incidental and not a result of intent. So small issue, but one that we'll continue to address as it does occur. For all levels of soccer, this is a change also. All fouls will result in an indirect free kick, with the exception of a penalty kick, which will remain a direct free kick. Again, the description of an indirect free kick, the ball must be played by or touched by a second player, either a second offensive player or touched by a defensive player before it can cross the goal line and be counted as a goal. Players cannot just step up, wail away, and have it go directly into the net. It must touch another player before going in to the net to be counted as a goal. For unified, the referring to ratio of athletes and partners, failure to adhere to the required ratio results in a forfeit. So if you don't have the the 3 with the required number of partners, then it is a forfeit, as Mike had covered in a prior slide up there at the top. PDU highlights. As Mike talked about, PDU, I think, is really a good opportunity for transitional level skills and team play to come into full fruition for many of your athletes. It consists of 5 athletes and 2 mentors on the field. This is a special situation here too, and I think it's an important one. The goalie must be a Special Olympics athlete. The mentors are on the field coaches facilitating the athletes playing the game. It is the athletes who are playing the game and determining the outcome. The mentors are not players on the team, unlike the traditional unified players. The mentors can give verbal and visual instructions to players, give physical direction to a player, receive the ball if it comes to them naturally during the course of the game, keep a ball in play that would otherwise go out of bounds and no other players are in the way in the vicinity of the ball. They can start the offense following the opposing team scoring a goal and escort an athlete bringing the ball down the field, but with the athlete advancing the ball. So they're kind of side by side, kind of in the ear of the athlete during the course of play, giving them advice, but are not out there to score goals. They're not out there to play defense. They're not out there to really get involved in play it themselves. Some explicit cannots for the mentors. They cannot directly impact the course of the game. By that, one of the usual examples is mentors come out, they shoot and score to win the game. That's a impact directly on the course of the game. First of all, it's not an indirect shot if it's a penalty shot or a foul shot that they're taking. So you don't want them just going out and blasting. They cannot give instruction that it is designed to distract or confuse the opposing team. Just have them pay attention to the folks that are on their own team. They cannot score. If it bounces off of them, normally what we've said, yeah, it's a goal. But if they particularly are ones taking the shot or making an offensive move, that goal will not count. They cannot play defense, either actively or passively. They can't get in the way of passes. They cannot steal the ball. They cannot block shots. They cannot intercept the pass from the opposing team. They cannot impede the advancement of the opposing team down the field, either actively or passively. They can't shoo away members of the opposing team when one of their team members has the ball. They cannot excessively control the ball. It's not up to them to take the ball from pillar to post. They cannot excessively control the game. We want the athletes to be the ones who are playing the game. Any questions about that? That has not been an issue for the most part on the PDU side. Most of the folks have been very, very good about being the background player and the voice of guidance to their athlete partners rather than being the stars of the show. So I applaud all the coaches and all the mentors who have come in and done that, because they've done a really good job with that particular aspect of the game. The uniforms, it's real soccer, not just to the players, but to all the spectators, to the officials, and everybody else in the soccer community. So we want them to look good, and we want them to be attired to compete. We would like to have their jerseys marked with a 25 centimeter number on the back. It's about 6 inches. Jerseys must be numbered in a permanent manner from 1 to 99, and duplicate numbers are not allowed. We want pants or shorts, not jeans, to be of a like color among all team members. So whatever shorts they're wearing should be the same shorts. In the case of inclement weather, varying colors may be allowed at the discretion of the event competition director and the head official. If it's cold, if it's raining out there, I'm guaranteeing you that there won't be an issue with what the kids are wearing. We want them to be comfortable while they're playing. Undergarments that are visible, like a short sleeve t-shirt under a sleeveless jersey, shall be of a like color among all team members. This includes individual skills athletes as well as team play. You would not believe when we go to the high school soccer training classes every year how much time is spent on making sure that the colors match, that their sliding shorts match the color of the uniform. It just goes on and on and on. But I mean, the end result here that we're looking for is everybody looks professional and athletically ready. Hats, headgear, including concussion head protective bands, may only be worn for medical or religious purposes. Yeah, it's sunny out there, but we don't want hats on. They're problematic. They could cause an injury. Somebody turns their head. Eyes are susceptible to something like that with the bill coming around. So if there's a specific reason why you should have it, fine. Otherwise, no hats. The shoes have soft and yielding cleats, no metal studs, and are permitted outdoors only. Individual skills athletes are not permitted to wear cleats. We had a couple issues during years where we've had bad weather down there at Crown, where some of the athletes were trying to wear their spikes indoors. Crown doesn't allow it, and this rule doesn't allow it either. So if it looks like it may be a hazard or a problematic time with the weather, particularly down there at Crown, make sure that they have something that they can wear as far as footwear on an indoor basis. The goalkeeper should wear a color which distinguishes him or her from the other players and the referee. We just, want to know if somebody's reaching down and grab the ball, that they are indeed the goalie. And just as long as it is a distinguishable color, we're fine. All jewelry must be removed before competition. That includes earrings, rings, necklaces, anything like that. Unless there's a specific religious reason for it. We haven't run across that, but again, the injury and the threat of a cut or some bloodletting as a result with the ears, we want to stay away from. So all jewelry removed before the competition. Shin pads and guard.
Jeff,
Yes.
with that, this is Mike. So for medic alert bracelets, they tape them down.
They're fine. If there's a medical reason associated with a medic alert, for example, and that's a good one to bring up, yes, if they're taped down, that's fine. A couple of the other kids may have had some medical devices, shunts or something along the line. And that's fine too, as long as it's taped and not in a position where it's going to cause harm to others. Officials' discretion for eyewear. If they are for medical use, please have the soft sports frames as well as a fitted strap to hold glasses securely to the face and head. Again, that has not been an issue. Most of the kids have the goggles anyway when they're out there playing if they have the glasses on. But me personally, and I'm telling you, none of the referee group is going to have an issue if the kid doesn't have the sports frames or a strap. It's not something that's problematic. I'm wearing glasses while I'm out there reffing. So it's one of the things that it's a suggestion, but it's going to be with a wink and a nod, I guess, if we have any issues with that. This particular slide here, slide 22, let's talk about this in a little more detail than normal. As I was telling Melissa, in my experiences over the years, there haven't been many rules related, fouls related, on the field issues that have been problematic. However, with that being said, this is one aspect of what goes on the field that has had the most discussion, let's say, between officials, coaches, and players. And that is the principle of meaningful involvement. Let's read what the Special Olympics rules say. Meaningful involvement is an effort to optimize participation by all team members, athletes, and partners, based on the principle that every player should contribute to the success of the team. The composition of any team must include players with necessary sport-specific skills. Teams should not, and I like the fact that this is boldface, include players who dominate play exclude other teammates from contributing to the successes of the team, or present a health and safety risk on the field of play. By permitting any player to dominate play, other players' roles and opportunities are greatly limited. This violates both the spirit and the intent of the Special Olympics Unified Sports Rules and the philosophy, and will be addressed according to the standards set forth by each sports rules and governing ordinances. Consequences for noncompliance are either specific player sanctions. In other words, hey, why don't you go have a seat and maybe bring somebody else in that can dial it down a notch? What do you think? Or they could have team consequences, the forfeiture of the game or disqualification from the tournament if that level of dominant play persists or is not addressed by the coach. Special Olympics general rules. If an official determines that a player is dominating play, the official shall sanction the player and or coach. Sanctions will include warning the player and or coach, citing the player and or coach with unsportsmanlike conduct, or removing the player and or coach from the game. Designation of a unified sports expert or the competition director who supports officials and addresses issues at events and is ultimately empowered to enforce meaningful involvement. So, like I say, Mike, maybe you can jump in. I know when there have been times where I've had to come to you for issues, it has almost been 100% this meaningful involvement issue. So it's a problem to officiate, first of all, because it's one of those things where what you think is dominant might not be what I think is dominant. But in this circumstance, it's my opinion that counts. So if somebody's out there being Pele at the expense of the rest of them, I love to watch a player that's good. I don't love to watch a player who's ignoring his teammates. And I don't like to watch a player who is out there blasting shots from midfield at a athlete who is a goalkeeper that has little chance to make a stop on something like that. So it's not that the other players cannot score. It's that we don't want them to be the only ones who score. It's not that the other players are the ones who cannot play aggressive defense. It's that we don't want them to be the ones who are playing aggressive defense the entire game to the detriment of any offensive opportunities for the opposition to occur. So it's a fine line, to be sure, but it's one of those things, I think when you see it, you know it. You might not be able to define it directly, but it's almost an intuitive capability to say this guy's doing too much or this girl's doing too much.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents on it. Mike, any thoughts or comments you might have on it?
Sure, Jeff, I think you covered it really, really well. I mean, we are not saying that players need to play down or whatever. We're not saying that. What we are saying, though, is every athlete on the team needs to be able to make a meaningful, that's where the phrase meaningful involvement, that every player has that opportunity to make a meaningful contribution to their team. That doesn't mean that every player has to be able to score and such, but where that, and I think most coaches certainly have their teammate or their players in the game. I mean, there's no minimum play time that's required, but each athlete needs to get in there. Where it starts to get skewing is there are the situations that Jeff described, where you have one or more players that essentially take over the game to the detriment of everyone else there. Pam, you had your hand up, or you're just waving to us. So.
Yes. this has happened to me where I played against a team, and they actually played like two different teams. They would have 5 go in and then 7 go in or whatever, and 7 go in the next time. But then when they finally got in competition, they used the top, and I know it's probably just coaching strategies, but they would use the top 7, so they ended up winning. And I don't know, I know it's a strategy, but it's also really, it doesn't show what you really have. It just,
Right.
So I'm just mentioning that, even though it's not.
They
Well, I
had
think one thing
players
to-
on the,
Go ahead, Jeff.
I just want to clarify the issue here. Did they actually have players on the bench that did not compete during the course of the game? Is that what you're saying happened?
No, sir. I'm just
Oh,
saying,
okay.
like, when it really counted and they needed a goal or something like that, or like the score, or maybe the second half of a major game, they made sure that they had what the strongest athletes in the game.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
when they went like the qualifiers and things like that, they didn't do that. When they went to qualifiers, they kept it.
Yeah.
Team A, team red and team blue. But I mean, I don't think there's anything you can do about it. But
Yeah, well, the one thing, and Steve will talk a little bit about if he doesn't get pulled away, he may get pulled away for a critical phone call, in which case then I'll talk about it. We do, for divisioning, at least for the championship, we do have a team of coaches come in, as well as some officials. Jeff, I think, typically has done it.
Yeah.
I know Nancy Schmidt has come in for this and several others. And they review the matchups, and to the extent that they can, they're considering each team based on who their strongest 5 or 7 or whatever the number happens to be.
Mhm.
One of the challenges with Maryland that Maryland has, and other small states, is there's just, if we had 100 soccer teams, we could balance stuff out pretty well and have good matches.
Right.
I think the last time we had soccer, there might have been, Steve, what was it, maybe 25, something like that, teams.
Yep.
And so it just, it's an art rather than a science in getting them matched up. So the intent is to try to utilize this principle of meaningful involvement to at least balance that out somewhat. And I think that also is a show of good sportspersonship. I know as a coach myself, when I've, now I have not actually been able to coach at games because I usually have other things I need to do, but prior to coming back on staff, when I coached at games, if I know that that my team way outclasses another team, that's where I have some of my other players come in, and they get more
yeah.
experience, they get more play time than
Mhm.
maybe they might have otherwise. And that's something that I
It's
would
great.
encourage coaches to do.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I know you guys. You really do a good job.
Yeah.
I know sometimes it is hard.
Yeah, and that's a
I
tribute to all the
appreciate it.
coaches here. So
Yeah.
and we could talk about this for the entire hour.
Yeah,
I want to be
let's-
respectful of people's time. So any other comments, or Jeff, anything? I think this might have been the last slide you were going to touch on.
Yeah. In my opinion, it is a beautiful thing to watch when the partners are doing the things that you like them to do. But it really gets ugly when it goes in the other direction. It goes in that direction seldom. Most of the issues, most of the games with the partners in it are just wonderful to watch. And the partners, I can't do anything except applaud 99.9% of them, because they're great people, great kids that are out there with the athletes. But every once in a while, I just shake my head and I think, what are you trying to prove? So keep it in the back of your mind for those coaches who are out there that are involved at that level. But it's just one of those things that, for whatever reason, just keeps sneaking up, and I wish it wouldn't.
Okay.
I'm finished.
Great, thank you. Okay, Steve, you want to try to take a whirl, and we'll see if you have to drop off at a moment's notice, I will jump in.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mike. So here we have the soccer deadlines for the upcoming season. So For the training registration deadline, that's when everyone who is training in the sport of soccer, whether or not they're going to the state championships, we want all of their information into GMS or the database and work with your area leadership there. Give them the information so they can input it into the system. We can take a look at it here at the state office. With that being said, also the areas and the county programs may have different deadlines than what you see on this screen. These are the deadlines that we at the state office have to go by, and they may have a few of these dates may be a little earlier than what you see on the screen, so they get the information from you in order to meet the deadlines we've established here at the state office. So again, August 30th is everyone who's training in the sport. Get them into the system, get them to your area leadership so they can input that information in. Anyone submitted after that date, they can still be submitted. If you have somebody moving to the area they want to train, that's fine, but just realize that after that deadline of August 30th, they're not eligible to move on to the state. It doesn't give them enough time to get the training requirements in. So the last date for missing forms, again, as coaches, hopefully everyone's aware you have all the forms. You may have some of those forms in your hand, but not necessarily submitted. And we have them here at the state office through our registration process. But if we come back to the county programs and say, hey, we don't have this information for these athletes or partners in our system, those have to be in by September 8th. Obviously, we'll communicate with the county programs to let them know of those situations. But the important thing here is with all the information and the forms, everything needs to be valid through October 31st. That's obviously the time of the state championships. So we want to make sure that everyone moving on to the state championships has that throughout that whole season, including the state championships. So it lists here everything that you need. Again, the important or the new thing here is the CDW. I did have to step away, so I apologize if this has already been mentioned. That's the communicable disease waiver form. And again, you may have seen the AOR, or people may have said, I've already submitted the acknowledgement of risk. That's no longer applicable here, no longer accepted. It's the new form. Everyone has to have that in place before they do any training or any Special Olympics activities. So, and then the team assessment forms are due on September 10th. We'll see those here in just a second. And again, Melissa will send those out to you. It has an instruction tab on the spreadsheet, individual ratings, and then an overall team assessment. So, and then the registration for the state championship, there is October 1st. So again, that's when all the rosters need to be obviously finalized once you submit your things earlier in the season. And then at that point, anybody who's been registered but doesn't have events or is not assigned to a team, etc., they will be removed from the system. And so just again, check with your area leadership, get some reports, make sure what you've submitted is accurate, and do a double check on that.
And Steve, just one other note, as you folks can see in the lower right corner again, we recognize that this is particularly in that we always have an issue with the fall season, regardless of the year, but as this being with COVID and such, if you have a particular challenge with the deadline up above there, talk to your area director, and he or she may opt to see if there's some type of an extension or an adjustment that can be made. Can't guarantee it can always happen, but that's not something we would take from a coach individually. Your area director is the best judge as to whether that's something to ask, but talk to them. And much better, as Steve indicated, they have to get stuff into us. Talk to them early. Don't wait until the day of the deadline or the day after, for that matter. So, but anyhow, back to you, Steve.
Great, thanks, Mike. So here we'll talk about, obviously the one thing that's added here is the communicable disease waiver. So I mentioned that you can't do anything, any training, participation, anything without that communicable disease waiver in hand. And obviously with the background checks with the volunteers, coaches, et cetera, and the athletes with their medical forms. So again, there's no exceptions to that. Again, this is all going back to what we always think about in the forefront of our minds with almost every decision we make in Special Olympics is the health and safety of the athletes and the participants in mind. So again, don't start anything. Don't let anyone participate without those things in place to begin with. And again, like Mike said, be ahead of it. And work with the area leadership, again, establishing those deadlines, seeing how they want to get that information communicated to them, how you want to turn it in. Again, everything's for the health and safety of the athletes. And as we talk about, meet with the coaches, get the information out to the athletes. At your first training or whatever else, if you don't have all the communicable disease waiver forms, have some on hand and you can have those individuals signed. But again, communicate that ahead of time for your first practice and try to have everything in place prior to arrival. So this is just kind of a grid here, and we'll hit on this in another slide or two. Just kind of lays out what the requirements are for each individual that should be involved with your soccer or with any sport, training, exercise, etc. So you've got the athletes with their medical forms and waivers, the partners with their background screening, protective behaviors, and again, you see everything has that communicable disease waiver form. No one can be involved without that. So you see the list here of everything that's needed. And again, nothing's really changed except for that communicable disease waiver. And we'll hit on another slide that lays this out a little differently, but also easily read as well. So coach requirements, again, we'll hit on this with the next slide, but your class A, which is your background screening, et cetera, your volunteer application, your protective behaviors, concussion, the waiver we just talked about with the communicable disease waiver, the CSOA or the coaching Special Olympics athletes, or if you are strictly a unified coach, you can take that coaching unified sports in lieu of the CSOA. But if you go back and forth and coach traditional for one sport and unified for another, highly recommend you go ahead and take that CSOA and later take the unified sports or take them both. Again, great exercises, great information either way. So the one change between an assistant coach and a head coach is the head coach also has to have that sport specific training. Again, highly recommend that all coaches have that sport specific training. It does nothing more than to prepare you and give you opportunities to learn and be better coaches for the athletes, which is what we all want. So, all of those things above are valid for 3 years, and then the renewal process, you can talk with your area leadership or Melissa Anger or anyone here and give you some direction on that. So we can go on to the next one. Here's the other side I was talking about that kind of lays out everything that we just talked about. So I'm not going to go into detail. We've already covered it. The only other thing here that's different than the previous slides is the advanced coach. I know there's some individuals on this call who are looking to be part of the USA games coming up or future world games or invitational tournaments, regional tournaments throughout the United States, et cetera. And that's the advanced coach. And that individual or those individuals have to also have the principles of coaching course, or some people maybe have heard of that called the POC. So again, that's just an additional step in the coaching education program to prepare everyone for the advanced level coaching there. Code of conduct, not going to read all this to you guys. I think you guys know as well, you're leaders. You're the coaches that the athletes and partners look up to. You're the influencers on how you react to certain situations. Athletes, partners, and sometimes family members will take your lead. And if you're upset and throwing a fit, they will too. And again, we have policies and procedures in place. If you didn't agree with a certain thing, you can talk with staff members, you can talk with officials, you can file protest forms, but always act in that professional manner. And again, the athletes look up to you, and how you act is how they'll react as well. So you can read this at your leisure, but again, just be respectful for everyone, whether it's officials, volunteers, people who are checking you in at the beginning. If you miss something in your packet, you don't blow a fit and go off at the first time of the day, but just respect for all, and I'll leave it at that. So qualifying for the state championships. First and foremost, I'll say that, this should never be the goal. The goal is to have fun, enjoy the sport and have competition and get athletes exercise and just have fun. But for qualifying for the state championships, Obviously, you got to meet all the training deadlines we talked about a little earlier. All the coaches have to have their certifications in place. And here's the additional information is from a competition component side of things. As Mike indicated, we know we're in a situation with the world and COVID, et cetera, that there may be some things that may need to be adapted throughout the season. If you have issues and questions and concerns, this is always being revisited during this time in the world. So, but as it stands now, every team or athletes, if they're in individual skills, et cetera, must compete in a minimum of 2 qualifying events that are sanctioned. One is the required qualifiers for each of the teams, and then they can have another one, which can be a home and away series or a home series, or you invite another team to come and play you, working with other teams, etc. And then again, this is the minimum. The more competition opportunities we can get for the athletes, teams, partners, the better they're going to be, not only in the sport, but also to showcase their skills later in the season at the state championships, the showcase event, if you will. But really encourage everyone to get as many competitive opportunities out there. I always say, if I want to be on a team or play a sport and I have to train for 8 to 12 weeks and I only have 2 games, I'm not coming back next year. That's not fun. I'm here to learn, train, but the goal is I want to get out there and play and show my skills and have fun in the sport. So moving right along. So what is the point of a qualifying competition? I hit on some of that there, but basically you have to follow the rules. You have to have officials in place to monitor the game, and again, prepare the athletes and partners for game scenario situations. So they're not, they don't come to a state championship and they've only had in-house scrimmages, and then you get there and why is the official telling me this and that? We want them to be prepared and leading up and have a good experience at the state level. Also, you have to have medical personnel, again, health and safety of the athletes. And, you know, the sanction form, when you got, and we'll see some of these that have already been submitted here in the next slide or two, talking about the upcoming season. But the sanction form is really important for us so that we can share that information with you as coaches, put it on our website, inform everybody. Those sanction forms will be submitted by the area director, so or the county director. So just work with them and say, hey, just want to make sure you submitted the sanction form. I don't see it on the list, etc. So if we don't follow that information with the certified officials following the rules, etc., there's a chance that event or that competition that you were hoping to be counted as a qualifying event may not count. So if you have any questions, you know, just contact Melissa Anger. She'll be happy to talk that through with you and see what we can work out for you. With that being said, here is the list of the events that we have currently offered. We just updated this yesterday. Thanks to Howard County. They were able to take all of their league play from tentative to non-tentative official events as we stand at this point. So you see the list here. You see the contact information. Again, these slides will be sent out to you. The important thing, well, everything's important on this slide, but I do want to point out the fact that the third one down, you'll see that's the required PDU qualifying event. That's on October 2nd, okay? So those of you who are PDU coaches, that's the one you have to go to. Additionally, the one right under that on October 9th, that is the required qualifying event for 5v5. At this time, they're looking to also offer 7v7 in the skills component, but it's required for 5v5, okay? And that's in Mechanicsville there, again, on October 9th. The next one down, the required 7v7. That is at Severn on the 10th of October. And again, they're looking to offer the individual skills as well. So, and then we have the league plays that Howard County's come up and offered as they have in the past. So again, thanks to everyone who submitted their forms in. And if you have any other ideas and suggestions, go ahead and give us a shout out, and we can add it to the list and get some more competitions out there for the athletes. Team assessment form. Hopefully most of you guys, I know all the returning coaches are familiar with this. We talked about when the deadline was, etc. But so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Basically, the assessment form is for the coaches to assess their players on an individual basis, as well as on an overall team basis. And this is a component that helps pre-division, if you will, or match up teams throughout the season to provide competitive opportunities, and then move towards these state championships with the divisioning committee, etc., to fine tune. I will never say have a perfect division setup, but to fine tune and create those competitive opportunities where the best of our ability and the best of the information we have, we're creating good matchups for the teams. There will be, it's basically an Excel file. It has 3 tabs. One is an instructional tab. The second one is for your individual basis ratings that you see here, and it gives you the definitions of what to look for. And then the third one is basically the overall team assessment. The one thing I'll say here just to emphasize is as you're looking at the ratings, we've had these in the past where coaches will say, hey, this is the best played on my team. That doesn't mean that that athlete meets a certain score. You know, rate them as the instructions say. Okay, so if it's a scale of 1 to 10, and I don't have my readers on right here, but if it's a scale if it's a scale of 1 to 10, your best player may not be a 10. Your best player may be a 4.
Yeah. Actually, I think it goes up to 8, Steve. But so
Okay.
like with ball skills, I do have my readers on. But if they have difficulty dribbling and trapping the ball, that's 2 points for them. If they are up to the point where they can control the ball with both feet, that's 5 points. You just kind of look at each of the skill sets and find the descriptor that best describes that particular that athlete on that particular skill, and then do it for each of them. And I'm not sure if it automatically links to the summary sheet, but it gives the overall rating. So
yeah, so there's a summary sheet again. We saw the deadlines, and again, that's very important for us to have and coaches to submit. It also gives you an assessment of your players, obviously, to look at what you can help coach them on and improve them on, and work on them to improve their skill set. So, but again, you'll see these assessment forms as Melissa will send them out and make them available to you as coaches.
yeah, and if you don't follow, if you have questions, Melissa's great at this type of stuff. Give her a call, and the soccer sports management team, I'm sure, can help give you some guidance as well if you're having some difficulty.
Yeah, and Coach Estrada, yes, all these slides will be sent out to you as well, so you'll have that. If you haven't already left the presentation, appreciate your question there. As we were talking about, the divisioning is not a perfect science, but we do have a divisioning night. If you're interested, this is kind of Melissa's beg and plead out there. If you have interest in being a part of that team and you like pizza, if you don't like pizza, maybe she'll provide something else, Chick-fil-A or something else like that. But the divisioning night is where we take all the information, not only from the assessment forms, but also from the events and competitions and qualifiers that we've set up, look at the scores, look at the ratings, get the feedback from the coaches. I think we also created an assessment or an information form to be used from coaches during the season. When you play other teams, each coach from each team can provide feedback and say, hey, this is a great matchup. We both agree. And, you know, this is perfect. So that's great information in addition to what we already have formally in place. So let Melissa know if you want to be part of that team. A lot of good discussions. You know, again, it's not a perfect science, but if you want to be involved with that, let Melissa know, and she'll put the team together. If you have any questions, obviously contact Melissa.
Steve, Pam is either waving at you because she likes you so much, or she.
Hi, Pam. Go ahead, Pam.
It could be both. You never know. Going back to qualifiers, you said one thing, but in the paper that you were reading, it said something different. from what it would say. I think it's from actually, go on, I'm back.
Those.
Keep going. There you go. No.
No.
Go back down. One. There, I can't see it. Let me take this off.
What was the
Yes.
confusion point though?
I thought I saw, yeah. Must attend a required qualifier competition as well as 2 other competitions.
That was something that didn't get edited correctly. So
Right.
Yes.
good eye. Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
that was the test, and you passed, Pam.
Oh,
But,
thank
no,
you, thank you.
no, but
That's fine. My biggest problems that I have is, to tell you the truth, is that a lot of my guys work. And, you know, I'm glad it's only 2 because, I mean, I would love to take them to more. And I could probably bring most of my team, but I can't bring everybody every time
Yep,
because they work and they have to get off from work.
yep.
And not only is it hard for them to, not hard, but you know, they don't want to take too much time off because they want to keep their jobs. And
Understand.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, some of that, you know, are life decisions, and I don't want to get into too much of that, but
Yeah, but you know, it's hard to require my athletes to make a life decision.
yep. And again, we've got to have our policies in place and stuff, but I think that's
Oh no, I understand it.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know,
Yeah.
I just, you know, it's a major problem that I have because the majority of my guys have jobs. Now, some of them don't work during the week, which is a blessing for me because I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But,
No, and I think there can be other opportunities too. Obviously, the required ones we have to go to, and that's why we've got that. Melissa's done a great job to get
yeah.
the information in place now. And
Yes.
some of those additional ones, again, if talk to your athletes and say, hey, let's get some more opportunities here. Who can work, who can be available on which day, and reach out to some of the other neighboring teams and say, hey, we're willing to travel this day. We have a facility. Can you come down to us? Work that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Good deal.
Thank you.
But thanks for pointing that out, Pam. Appreciate it.
Thank you, hon.
So yeah, just going back to the last slide there, and my portion is, if you have any questions, obviously reach out to Melissa Anger. I know she's developed great relationships with you as coaches throughout the years. Always willing to step up and help work through any of the issues, and has done a really good job in the situation we've been in with COVID leading up to this point. So, and we have this slide there. If anybody else for the upcoming fall sports season with golf, powerlifting, long distance running, Ryan Kelchner is the contact there, our sports director. Cycling and bowling, unfortunately at this point, you've got to contact me, as we are in the midst of replacing the sports director with that Zach Cintron previously held, as he's moving on in a senior director position within Special Olympics Maryland, with the Interscholastic Unified Sports component here. So, and again, if anybody goes up to the Fall Fest, obviously flag football and tennis, Melissa, as well as soccer. So these next couple slides here, we're not going to go into it at all. These are just examples of, hey, the certifications, the paperwork, the codes of conduct, the forms, etc., just so you see what they are. If there's any new coaches, or it's been a year or two and you've kind of forgot what they were, in this slide deck, there's examples of all of that, the sanction forms, the medical forms, the applications, all that kind of stuff, just as a resource for you as coaches to have as a reference point and ask any questions with your area leadership. So
Yeah, and I would point out, again, use it as a reference. Any form that you would need is available on the coach resource page. You can download it as a PDF, and every form. Now watch, Pam, you'll find one that's not, but our eagle eye. But every form should be on there. If it's not, we'll add it right away, including all the different, if you have a special, unique medical situation and all that stuff that sometimes pops up. those are all there as well. So,
Yeah, and Janice, I think I saw you have a hand up, or maybe that was, oh, okay.
Sorry, I was scratching my back.
Gotcha. Okay. I hope you scratched the itch. I always say, I hope you itched the
I
scratch.
got it.
Hopefully you
Thank
scratched the itch. But yeah, with that being said, I don't think there's anything else here, but again, on behalf of Melissa, and behalf of Mike, Jeff Bailey, myself, and others at the state office and in your county program leadership, we really appreciate all of your efforts in the past, in the last year, in leading up and throughout this season. Without you as coaches and your leadership, obviously Special Olympics soccer and other sports that you may coach don't happen. You're providing the opportunities and the leadership and the working with the athletes, giving them the experience, giving them the skill sets, developing them as not only athletes, but also giving life lessons through sport. So we just want to acknowledge you guys and all the time and dedication and efforts you've put in to make Special Olympics Maryland what it is. So I also want to thank Mr. Bailey and all the officials who come out and dedicate their time and resources to make our program a success. So with that, I think we'll open it up to any questions. And again, just really commend you guys as coaches. We're here to support you. So reach out to us if you're having challenges, questions, or issues, and we'll try to work with you to find solutions.
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Steve, I don't see any questions or hands raised or anything in the chat. So, yeah, so we will look to see you all at Cedar Lane Park or at other locations throughout the year or throughout the season. And looking forward to getting the athletes back out there. So thank you much. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, it looks like Barbara, you came in. Any questions?
No, I just wanted to introduce myself to you, Mike, and I look forward to having you on the field in a few weeks.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you, Barbara. Janice, I saw a hand raised again. Was that a back
no.
scratch again?
It's a virtual back scratch. for me.
Actually, I was clapping you guys. I'm not
Oh,
doing
Gotcha.
this.
Thanks.
Can I talk to Mike at the end of this, please?
I don't know.
Well, Mike, can I
We'll have
talk
to
to
wait
you at
sure
the
that
end?
we have to make sure the recording's off.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Any other questions before we end the meeting and end the recording? Otherwise, everyone's free to go back to your evening. And again, stay safe out
Thank
there. Keep
Thank
up
you
the
all
good
very
work.
much.
Thank
Maybe
you.
you
you.
should keep that recording on.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nothing-
Pam's known me too long. She may tell stories.
No, nothing exciting. I just have